Today I'm going to try to talk some sense into those whack job creationists. You know who you are. The folks who go to Creationist website because learning from those books is just oh so hard. So buckle your seatbelts, tighten up your tinfoil hats. It's going to be a bumpy ride. Greetings, YouTube denizens. It's Herc again, and I have a question. This morning I was watching a YouTube video with a young fellow who was being schooled by some non-believers, and they were telling him all about evolution. He would ask a question, and they would answer something else. It wasn't going well, as you might guess, and my question is, why was he talking to them in the first place? I have an idea. If you want to learn something about evolution, why don't you go pick up a book about evolution? If you really wanted to know about evolution, why would you go to a creationist website and try to figure it out from there? The answer is probably something to do with belief. The guy believes something, and he wasn't looking for answers to his questions. He was looking to prove that no one could answer his questions. Kind of a different scenario. So what this is, I should first probably point out that I'm not an evolutionary biologist, and I don't play one on TV. Till now. Maybe you're watching it on TV, I don't know. But I've read a book or two, and then I read another book or two, and you know why? Because I was curious. I wanted to know about evolution. I was also finding it fascinating and interesting. I used to read a lot of books by Stephen Jay Gould, and I've read Richard Dawkins, and I've read a whole bunch of other people. I couldn't even name them all. So I got some idea how it works, and I've probably forgotten a lot more about evolution than I know. But I do know something about the basics, and that's important. This is what they should have done with this young creationist. They should have started with some definitions. Because the first thing the creationists did was come up with this idea of kind. What is a kind? Well, in science, it's a nothing. We don't talk about kinds. The Bible talks about kinds. Who wrote the Bible? A bunch of Stone Age goat herders who didn't know a thing about science. They had no way of cataloging all the various animals on Earth. They just didn't do that sort of thing. So why would you trust them over people who do that sort of thing? Take that word kind and throw it in file 13. Get rid of it. Set fire to it. Whatever you have to do, get rid of the word kind. The word kind doesn't work. I was watching a video some time back with Ray Comfort, and when he was asked what kind a raccoon was, he replied, "It's a raccoon kind." So I suppose there's a kangaroo kind, and a platypus kind, and an octopus kind, and, well, when you get enough kinds, they're not going to fit on all the boats on the planet, let alone in one boat. So let's be real here. We don't call them kinds. We call them species. So what we're going to do next is work on something called Now, if you were going to ask a creationist what the definition of evolution is, they'd probably tell you that it's one animal changing into another, and they've never seen a dog change into a cat. Yeah, right. Well, we're not going to listen to them. We're going to tell you what evolution is. Now, my favorite definition will probably make no sense to anyone, but it's a simple and concise definition. Evolution is the frequency of alleles in a given population over time. Now, The problem with that is then we need some more definitions, because who the heck knows what an allele is? Well, an allele is simply alternate forms of genes. And frequency means how many of these things are in the population. And the population is any group like humans, for example. And over time means they don't stay the same. Now, in any group, especially as large as 7 billion humans, there are a lot of genes that all humans don't have, or they have variants of those genes. And so collectively we have them, but we don't all have the same ones. If some disaster were to strike that only people with a certain gene could survive, then those would be the only ones who survived, and all the rest would die off. And then they would reproduce and pass on those genes. So let's see, what's the next definition we've got here? A species is a way to classify organisms that can interbreed and produce fertile offspring. Now that's a little bit rough. We can say that there are some exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, that's it. They can breed with each other, and they can produce offspring that can also breed with each other, and that's what a species is, not a kind. And by the way, I'm giving some very rough definitions here, and I'm trying to keep it as clear as possible without getting into a lot of depth. I don't intend to go into a lot of depth here because that's not necessary to understand the basics of evolution. An allele is one of two or more alternative forms of a gene that arise by mutation and are found at the same place on a chromosome. Well, we're not going to even bother to define a chromosome. You should have got some of this in school. And then a gene is a unit of heredity. I'm not going to go any deeper than that. It's a unit of heredity. It's based in RNA and DNA, and you don't need to know that in order to understand that evolution works or how it works. If you want to become an evolutionary biologist, you're going to need to know it, but otherwise, maybe not. Not right at this moment. And a mutation is errors. That's errors in the genes, either the way they're copied or that they're damaged or something that changes them. And a lot of mutations really do work for the better, although a lot of them are not so good, and most of them don't do anything. In part 2, I'm going to address some creationist questions and explain why they're probably not very good questions. See you there. Thanks for listening, and I hope I'm making you think.
Ooh.